Hey guys, TKC here with my latest creation. This is pretty much Bottle.deck. Now, this is not like Drummer JMM's Birds and Bottles deck. This is kind of completely different, and this deck mainly wants to get really good use out of the main card of the deck right here, Bottle of Wishes. This card is just so much fun. It hasn't really been proven to be like competitive or very good yet. But this deck might be one of the few decks where it's actually really useful because it has just really good targets. Now, unlike the Birds and Bottles deck, this one's using a lot more focus on the powerful creatures, and it has ramp the traditional style instead of using birds. So let's go ahead and go from left to right, starting with the Light Civilization, which is only 8 cards. So you gotta use 3 Andromeda because you can't use a bottle deck unless you're using 3 Andromedas, because bottle into Andromeda is just like the most lolsy thing you could ever do. So that's pretty much a staple in a deck that focuses around bottle, no question. This card has been doing some amazing things so far in the format. And then, of course, you gotta run the also really good light card, Lyra the Blazing Sun. This card really helps stall out the game and leads you into the late game and leads you to finding answers and stuff like that. It's just really good at stopping your opponent from going for game, basically. You just kind of like leave stuff tapped, get rid of it next turn somehow. It just buys you time, which is really what this deck wants to achieve. And then 2 Grandgers, which is just super good this format. It stops so many things, especially Saberbolt, Rush decks. So I feel like Granger is kind of needed in here, and also it pushes the Light Civilization up to 8 cards when it originally used to be only like a splash of these 6, which didn't work out too well. So I've tested this deck out quite a bit, and yeah, the Grangers are very clutch. A lot of people can't deal with Grangers, especially when they come out early. Alright, let's go into Fire now. Of course, you gotta use the playset of Infernus, the Awakened. This card pretty much stops Rush in its tracks, especially if you know, like they Blaze Belcher into Bottle of Wishes, then you hit Infernus, get rid of Blaze Belcher, and then they pretty much just can't play anything, and you just win the game from there. Of course, that rarely ever happens. I don't think that's ever happened to me in testing. I've mainly tested against Rush decks because like that's like the one deck that like I'm most scared of when I play this kind of deck, and it actually has a really good matchup against Rush. Like even with the slow-paced nature that this deck has, you know, it still manages to beat Rush really well. So yeah, Infernus the Awaken, it's just huge. It's 13,000. Not a lot of decks out there can deal with this. And for some more value creatures in the deck, we got 2 Bull Tails, one signed by Brian Kibler, oh yeah, and one Mourner the Vengeful. Mourner the Vengeful is also for Rush, but it's also good against other things. Like, it's even good against Control, you know, getting rid of 2 creatures instead of 1. Well, this one, you know, could potentially go more than 1. But Morna is like essentially like a 4th Infernus in a way. Just a board sweeper, which is really nice in this deck. And 2 Bull Tails are just good at getting over things that are just kind of like attacking you, and you're like, nope, get it off the field, you know, whether it be Sabertooth or Bolt Tail or whatever. Tatsurion, Tap Lyras, I don't know, just a bunch of stuff. Bull Tail is just really good for that. But you only need 2 of those. And then 2 Dragon's Breath. I prefer Dragon's Breath over Barrage, especially in this deck. I don't think I ever hardcast, you know, Dragon's Breath, so that's why you're kind of hoping for this to be in shields or popped off a bottle when a Rush deck is attacking you. I just like the 3,000 power. That's so relevant, you know, like Drakon Weaponsmith attacking into a shield. It has 3,000 power, so if you use Barrage, well, you can't get rid of Drakon Weaponsmith. So Dragon's Breath gets rid of that. Drakon War Chief when it's not attacking. Just a bunch of stuff. Dragon's Breath is just really good for those kinds of situations. So my fire section, also 8 cards. Now for water, water is 9 cards, I believe. For another big creature and a board sweeper in a way, we got Waterspout Gargoyle. So Waterspout Gargoyle in itself is, you know, not the biggest creature, but, you know, the cost is big and the effect is very useful. It ends up being like another Morna in a way. It's like another board sweeper, or you could use it as a way to reuse your dragons over and over again. So you could basically play this, bounce Waterspout, bounce Andromeda, and then play Andromeda next turn, get more shields, and you could just kind of like loop from there. So yeah, Waterspout is just really nice, and it allows the water section to have 9 cards, which is more than the 8 that these two have, because the Water Civilization has a little bit more cheaper cards, and so for that reason you want to be able to consistently play those early drops. And so having more cards in that section is better to have. Now I'm only using 2 Search the Depths. You know, like you could use Logo Scan or Spy Mission or whatever. But let's just say you don't get your ramp going and you just kind of like want to dig for an answer or something like that. Search the Depths is really good for that. Like if you draw a Water Spout early on, you put that in mana. Then turn 3, you play Search the Depths, you dig for Bottle of Wishes, or you dig for Reap and Sow, you dig for like something that will help you out. Search for a card that lets you put it in mana and then play a card of the same civ. Like let's say you have Reap and Sow in your hand, but you don't have Nature, you just dig for Sprout, put Sprout in mana, play Reap and Sow. It's just really good at digging, and since this is kind of like a combo deck in Nature, you would rather play this. It's also a Shield Blast, so you know it's never bad to activate as a Shield Blast either. And then down here we got more Shield Blast for water. We got 3 Crystal Memory and 3 Bottle of Wishes. Crystal Memory is good at pretty much any point in the game. You could search for Bottle of Wishes to hard cast at turn 5, although I wouldn't recommend that too often. It really depends on the situation. If you're against like a rush deck and you're losing, well then you might as well go dig for Bottle and hope for the best and get Infernus or something, or Andromeda or whatever. So, you know, there are certain situations where if you're feeling pressured or whatever, you definitely have to dig for the Bottle. But if you're going against a control deck that's just kind of building up slowly, you kind of just want to build up slowly with them, and then just build into like a bunch of Andromedas and Infernus and stuff like that, and just control the game from there. But like even late game, Crystal Memory is really good. You're gonna have tons of mana because this deck has so many ways to increase your mana really fast, and so you can just like dig for your Andromeda, play it, save yourself. So the Crystal Memories are just really clutch in like almost any situation, so that's why they're there. And of course, the 3 Bottle of Wishes, so many good targets, especially when it's Shield Blasted. Now, the one thing I want to say about Bottle of Wishes is that I see a lot of people kind of just like playing it because they could, you know, it's like, oh, I don't have anything else to do, I guess I'll just play Bottle. But you have to be really careful when you're doing that. Like the only reason I would hardcast it is if I'm being pressured, and if they have creatures on board. Because if they don't have creatures on board, well, this deck will flop so many times. Like, you know, of course there are the ramp cards, which are not the best targets at all. But like if you hit like a Root Trap when they have nothing on their field, Tendril Grass, Dragon's Breath, you know, just a bunch of stuff don't do anything. And so I would just rather hold the Ball of Wishes for times when you really, really need it. When they're like, they have a big creature and you want to get rid of it. Okay, play Bottle. Or just like Shield Blast is like the best place for it to be in. But yeah, but if you have it in hand turn 5, you should really only use it if they have creatures on board, so you get the best use out of your Bottle of Wishes. And now on to the Nature Civilization, which is the most cards in the deck. I believe it's 15. The reason for having 15 cards and having like a significant amount of cards in that civilization over the other ones is that it has tons of cheap mana excel, tons of cheap ramp, and you want to be able to consistently get that. You know, like Sprout, you want to consistently be able to play turn 2 Sprout, so you need to have tons of nature cards so that you draw 1 nature card plus the Sprout by turn 2. So if you start the game, your odds are not looking too good. You only see 6 cards, and so you really need to be able to get 2 nature cards in your hand to be able to play the Sprout or the Drifting Toadstool. So I'm playing 3 Sprout because it's the best ramp card, really, and 2 Drifting Toadstool. I don't want to use too many Drifting Toadstools because, you know, it kind of is a kind of really bad play, because like Sprout, it's a -1, and then Drifting Toadstool, it's also a -1, but you're losing more cards out of your hand. Like you're getting this out of your hand and another card out of your hand. Whereas Sprout, it's a card in your hand and then one from the top of the deck. So Toadstool is actually really good though. It could potentially go up to 3, but I'm really not sure about that. Toadstool is just really good because it counters Rush in a way. Like if they get the Blaze Belcher off, you could actually take your Toadstool and just bash into the Blaze Belcher, so it actually has some sort of use. And also it combos really, really well with the Tendril Grasps over here, because like let's say you're going against a Rush deck and you pretty much just wipe their whole field with Tendril Grasp. Well, guess what? Your Drifting Toadstool is actually going mana with them, and in turn you're basically ramping yourself. So it ramps just with Drifting Toadstool, and then you ramp again with Tendril Grasp. So that's really, really cool. I'm only using 2 Energize. It's basically more Sprouts, but these ones power up your dudes, which could be useful in some situations, I guess. I mean, I had a situation where an Infernus was tapped on the opponent's field, and I had an Infernus, and I just kind of energized, pumped it, and killed it. That's a very rare situation, but it happens at times, I guess. And plus you could search it with memory. I guess that's kind of cool as well. But yeah, nothing too special there. Then we have Reapinsos over here, really awesome. It's basically ramp and draw. It's kind of like a Search the Depths mixed with a Sprout without Shield Blast. It pretty much ramps you up and then allows you to dig for bottle or whatever else as early as turn 3, because you could Sprout into Reapinso, into bottle, if you're going against Rush, and yeah, I don't know, it's just really good in here. And then for the removal spells, 3 Tendril Grasp, because Rush is so annoying, and this deck is unaffected at all. If anything, it benefits it, because if you have a Toadstool on the field, you use Tendril, and then bam, you get Ramp, and you wipe their whole field, which is excellent. And I prefer this over cards like maxing out Barrage or Dragon's Breath or whatever, because, you know, Neuron is a card, Laser Arm Drakon is a card, and those are just, you know, bigger threats than just, like, you know, birds and stuff. So, yeah, Tendril Grasp is definitely a staple in here. And I'm only using 2 Root Traps. The main reason why I'm using Root Trap is because Heal-a-Flame is a huge problem in this deck. I really don't have any answers for Heal-a-Flame. I mean, I have Grangers, which are pretty good at stopping them, but, you know, that's it. And then I have these Root Traps just for Heal-a-Flame as well, or just like opposing big dragons, stuff like that. Root Trap also bypasses Lux, which is also quite relevant, so if you're in like an Andromeda mirror or something like that, you could Root Trap their Andromeda, no problem, and Lux can't do anything about that, so that's what I really like about Root Trap over Terror Pit. And, you know, just the fact that Darkness really doesn't fit in this kind of deck. I originally tried it as a splash. I, like, splashed Terror Pits and stuff. And I even, like, tried Skull Shatter. But I really don't like Skull Shatter. I feel like it's kind of against what this deck wants to do. It just kind of wants... It wants to just put constant pressure with big dragons and deal with Rush. That's basically what this deck wants to do. Or aggro, I guess, with Grangers and Lyras. Hope you enjoy this deck. I've been tinkering around with this deck ever since I saw Ball of Wishes come out as a card, as a preview, and I'm happy I finally got it out there to the world of Kaijudo. So let me know what you guys think. I definitely think this deck could actually be improved quite a bit more. This is probably like my, I don't know, 7th version of this deck. I've gone through so many different ideas with Bottle of Wishes, and this is pretty much like the best version I've came up with so far. So let me know what you guys think. Thanks a lot for watching. This is TKC, signing off. See you later, guys.